Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Hey, in today's episode, we're going to get into the trial of Ashley Benefield, the Black Swan. I'm going to tell you about the opening statements and who were the first two witnesses before we even get to lunch. Hello. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rebecca, your hostess, and with the mostest, I recap live trials so you have something to listen to while you are crafting today. While I'm listening to the opening statements, I am cross stitching. It's a little Satsuma Street stitch along designed by Jody Rice, and this is gonna be like a little ghost man here holding a martini. So I'm finishing this up. These are 2 cat heads. So the cats will be in there. I'm working on that, but I can't cross stitch and talk at the same time. So how's everybody doing? Yes, the trial started yesterday with jury selection. The trial of Ashley Benefield, the Black Swan Murder Trial is what everyone is calling it because she was a ballerina. Not while any of this was going on, but yes, in the past, she had been a ballerina. So, where do we start out? Opening statements. Well, first, the judge, let me tell you, yesterday was jury selection, and the judge kept everybody there. They didn't finish jury selection until 7 o'clock last night. 6 o'clock my time. But yeah, the judge had told the prospective jurors, call your loved ones, tell them you're going to be late because we aren't leaving till we get a jury. They got a jury. 7 o'clock. This judge is not putting up with any nonsense. He is crackerjack because this defense attorney is going to push his last button. I guarantee you. I've seen it already with the sidebars. So yesterday, there was also some motions by the defense attorney. One of them was, can this guy that's sitting at the defense table, I don't know who he is, can he have like a little dinner table to put his computer on? And they're like, you mean like a TV tray? Okay. Like that was a motion. And then there was a motion about a cord, a cable. It's going to go to, I don't know. And the positioning of this cord. Then this defense attorney gets up and asks the judge to recuse himself. This light will not stop coming on. Stop. I got to unplug it. It's going to get on my last nerve here. Okay. So recuse himself, meaning take yourself off the case. Why? Because this judge had already sat through a hearing that was very, very lengthy on a potential defense of stand your ground. They had a stand your ground hearing. In Florida, there's a law that says if you encounter, I don't know, whatever and you're where you should be, you do not have a duty to retreat. If you think you're in imminent danger, you can use deadly force. In this case, and there was no jury to hear this hearing. It was the judge, and the judge had ruled that no, this was not stand your ground. Now, I didn't listen to that hearing, so I don't. But the jury is not going to know. This jury is not going to know that there was a stand your ground hearing. But because the judge had made certain findings in that hearing, it was felt that the judge no longer perceives her as innocent until proven guilty, that he's already found her guilty, Well, the judge denied the motion, of course, but the defense attorney had to make his record. So today we get opening statements. Now, let me tell you, the defendant herself, they've dressed her up. She's in this powder blue cardigan, which I have to tell you, dear, I can't tell if it's a long sleeve or short sleeve, but we're in Florida here in July. This would not be appropriate attire. She's got her hair like with where you take it and braid it to the back, and then it's in a pony from the back. And I guess she has been instructed to look pitiful because that's what she looks like. And at times you'll see like her expression will start to change, and then she'll remember, oh, I'm supposed to look pitiful. And she'll go back to this pitiful look. Poor me look. Anyway. Yep. That's what she looked like. No makeup on, except it looks like she just put on some blush. So her cheeks are nice and rosy, but no makeup other than that. And these little teeny tiny diamond earrings. So we've got, little Miss Muffet sitting here, who now, because she doesn't have a stand your ground defense, is claiming they're not denying that she killed him. She's not denying it. Yep, I did it. But it was domestic violence. So that's where we start the case. So the judge does some preliminary instructions to the jury about taking notes and taking breaks and don't talk to this, that, and the other person. So the state gets up and says this was a woman who very early on in her pregnancy decided she wanted to be a single mom. Now, I don't know what woman would ever deliberately make that choice, because that statement is just absurd. I think that's just my opinion. But this woman she wanted to be a single mom, and she went to great lengths to ensure that the father of this child was not going to be in that in that baby's life. She went to the courts, she went to law enforcement, she went to the Department of Children and Families, and nobody was buying what she was selling. He was poisoning me and my unborn child. Nobody was buying it. And so she had no other options. So she killed him. Okay. So she talks about how they were married in South Carolina, that they met at a political event. I think I told you this was a fundraising dinner for Ben Carson. That didn't come out. The jury doesn't know that. They just know it's a political event. It was a fundraising dinner for Ben Carson, a Republican candidate for president early on. He's, obviously since then dropped out of the race. She at the time was a campaign manager for Donald Trump, and they bonded over guns and God. And I will tell you later on during some of the testimony, it comes out that she also that night was carrying a concealed weapon. And she went outside the Secret Service perimeter with Doug Benefield, which after she met him that night, and showed him where she kept her little, firearm. Okay. So then she moved to Florida because she was pregnant and she needed her mom to help take care of her. And during the time she was in Florida, she lived with her mom the entire time. He lived in an apartment. They did not live together in Florida. But for that entire year that they were in Florida, in this area, this is the Bradenton area, which is... It's on the west coast of Florida. It's over, I want to say it's just north of Tampa or just south. I think it's just north of Tampa. So it's on the west coast. So if you don't know Florida, the east coast of Florida is where all your New Yorkers and they all kind of congregate to that side, retirement wise, to that side of the state. Your Midwesterner retirees are all on the west side of the state of Florida. So it's like a whole different vibe between East Coast and West Coast. very different vibe, very different people, personalities, judges, that kind of thing. So during this year that they were reconciling, Ashley was just going along with him. Like the state attorney described her as having two different personas. When she was with Doug, it was all about they were going to reconcile. When she was not with Doug, she had no intention of reconciling with Doug. So she had no intention to make this work. Then she started making plans to move to Maryland. Her mother, who she was living with the baby, inherited a house in Maryland. I had not heard this before, so this is news to me that she inherited a house in Maryland. So they were going to move to Maryland. I mean, that makes sense. I know there was some. The jury does not know any of this, but there was some facts out there floating around, and they may or may not be true, that Doug Benefield's attorney had warned him she might be forum shopping to keep you from the baby going up to Maryland. But his plan was to go up there with her to Maryland. Not with her, but with her. To continue their reconciliation. However, and they were packing when all this went down. It went down on the September 27th. But on September 30th, there was a court hearing scheduled to discuss custody arrangements. And both of them had psychological examinations. And on the 30th, it was going to come to light during that hearing, and this is what the state is telling the jury, it was going to come to light during that hearing that she had no intention of reconciling with him. And that's what she was telling people outside of the relationship. So before that comes out at the hearing, she kills him. So she says that when Doug got to the house that night, Mom took the baby for a walk. So he was alone with Ashley. There were only two people present, just her and him. And she was the only one armed. He didn't have a gun. And she has no injuries. Now, the state told the jury, we're going to see pictures of no injuries. And they even took more pictures a few days later, because sometimes if you get some blunt force trauma, it'll take a little while for the bruising to show. So they wanted to make sure, hey, if you've got any bruising, let's see it. So we're going to see those pictures during this trial. And he was shot multiple times, not just once, several times. So she fired and kept firing, and the trajectory of one of the bullets shows that he was hit side to side, not front to back, like someone is coming after you and you shoot them in the front. Side to side, which I don't know how the defense is going to get around that one. So then the state goes into a little bit more detail. They met in August of 2016 at this political function. They got married 13 days later, and he was 30 years older than her. And it was Ashley's dream to start a ballet company. And he had the means to help her do that. He had, and after they got married, that's what they did. They started this ballet company. He had friends that he called on. He had investors that he called on. There was an attorney that was acting as a benefactor that was putting his money in there. And then Doug, although he had no cash to put into the business, sold a lot of his future stock options or stock, something to do with stock, sold all that, raised $100,000, and he put his money into this ballet. Now, the idea behind this ballet, and I'm just telling you what is being told to the jury, is diversity. They wanted ballerinas of different shapes and sizes, and not what you would see in a typical ballet, which is all a bunch of sticks. Anyway, so And this was not a cheap venture. This venture was going to cost multi-million dollars and involve at least 40 ballerinas. Or what do you call a male ballerina? Are they still up? What are they? Ballet. Okay. 40 ballet dancers. Let's say it that way. Okay. So we're correct. But right after they get this ballet company started, and it hasn't had any performances yet. There was the cousin testifies about this later on about the ballet company, but she wants him to reverse his vasectomy because she wants to get pregnant. So he does. And within weeks, she is pregnant, but she is so sick that she has to move to Florida so her mom can take care of her. So she moves down to Bradenton. She continued their long distance relationship, but they never lived together again after she moved to Florida. That she was accusing Doug of poisoning her and her unborn child. And Doug had actually, on March 15th, he had, this is of 2017, I believe, or 2018, maybe 2018. Anyway, through an attorney, he goes to a lawyer. He hires a lawyer, and they write a letter that is emailed to Ashley Benefield, telling her that he wants to invoke he wants to invoke his parental rights, and he wants to be part of the birth of this baby. She never responds. But the next day, after this email is sent to her, she goes to the hospital and is induced and has the baby, Emerson Benefield. I don't know if the baby's last name is Benefield, but Emerson. He doesn't find out about the birth of this baby because she never responds to the email, even after the birth. Like, hey, you missed it. Nothing. He doesn't get to see that baby for weeks. I think about when he first sees this baby of his is 6 months old. Emerson is 6 months old. So she files a restraining order against him, and he, in response to this restraining order, moves the court or files a motion to the court saying, I want visitation of my child. So this restraining order visitation hearing goes on for weeks. And because she's putting on experts to talk about poisoning and all this stuff. At the end, this judge said, no, you're not getting a restraining order. Now, the judge actually verbally said, but the jury wasn't told what the judge said. The judge said that she did not find not one scintilla of evidence to support what she was saying against Doug, including the poisoning and I don't know if she claimed domestic violence then, but she said there was not one scintilla of evidence. But the jury doesn't know that that's the statement the judge made. The jury knows that the judge denied the restraining order and granted Doug Benefield's right to see his child. So after this, he's starting to see his child. Now she's being all lovey-dovey. Let's get back together. And yeah, let's move to wherever it was they were going to move to. And at one point, after about a year, that she stops talking to him, and then he files for divorce, alleging that he is abusing the child. Now, when the state said that, the defense got up and, objection, sidebar, and the judge is like, no, overruled. And I'm thinking there was a motion about that, where there was not going to be any mention of the allegations against Doug and this child. But the state opened the door. I don't know why they did that, but okay. So I don't know if we're going to hear anything else about it. Anyway, so the state continues saying that she would act differently when he was not around. The whole reconcile, not reconcile type thing. So now the defense gets up, and the defense says that this was a 58-year-old man that Ashley Benefield was forced to kill. She was forced to do it. And that the alleged victim in this case is not Doug Benefield. It's Ashley Benefield. She's the victim. That Doug Benefield was a very disturbed man and that he was obsessed with her. That he was manipulative, cunning, and abusive. And he insisted on controlling her. Now I'm thinking, really? How? Now he admits later on in his opening that he never physically did anything to her. No. One time he slapped her upside the head. Other than that, no. It was all verbal manipulation. He was found by a neighbor once in her backyard spying on her. That he was carrying a concealed firearm. He put a tracker on her vehicle. He punched the dog in the face at one point so hard that the dog went unconscious. That there was one time when they were in the kitchen where he punched the drywall. And another time in the kitchen where he fired his weapon into the ceiling to get her to stop talking. And he says his previous marriage, or he said he had a history of prior marital domestic violence. Now, he's been married twice before. So I don't know which marriage he's referring to. But, and then he talks about the different characteristics of someone who's being abused or someone who's in a domestic violence relationship. But one of those is that you appease the person that's being violent against you because you don't want any more violence. So that, you want to reconcile? Sure, I'm going to reconcile. She's just appeasing him so that he won't hurt her, aligned with this visitation. This is what he's saying. Okay. That then he explains that the night, and this leads me to believe she is probably going to testify. So I think she has to, because they were the only ones there that night. So according to the defense attorney, he arrives steaming, like he's at the boiling point. This is what he says. When he arrives, and they've got one of those pod things in the driveway, and they're packing up the pod, and they're putting her stuff in last, because when they're moving to this other state, her stuff's going out first because she's living in a different place. So they're going to drop her off at her place, and he can take his stuff to his place. They're not going anywhere together except to the state together. Who is calling me? I don't know who's calling. Okay. So, okay, so that night, mom leaves to walk the baby. They're the only ones there. He's heated. They're having words. She says, listen, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And he thinks he's staying over there. She's like, no, you need to leave. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving. So he says, you can't leave me. She tries to leave. He blocks her from leaving. He says, you can't leave me. And she says, you need to leave now. And then she goes into her room, her bedroom. He follows her in there. She gets her gun. She turns around, looks at him. When she looks at him, or when she turns around and sees him, he's in the doorway, and he sees the gun. And now he's, in this kind of a stance where he's approaching her. And she starts fires multiple shots at him. So the abuse against her was a lot of intimidation and threats. He called it a warrior pose, like warrior pose, like, I don't know, a warrior pose. So that's the opening statements. So witness number one is a man named Tommy Benefield. He is the cousin of Doug Benefield and said that they were very close. They saw each other often. If it's like my cousin, it's like just the holidays. Just at Christmas. Like, is he going to be there? Do I owe him a present? That kind of thing. We don't call each other, that kind of thing. So he said they were very close. He described Doug as being 5'9", 160 pounds, slender, short guy. He's good looking, but I didn't know he was that short. Okay. He talks about how his previous wife had died of a heart attack in December of 2015, early December of 2015. He met Ashley about 9 months later. That night that they met, Ashley was carrying concealed weapons. I described that to you before. Ashley actually paid to have vasectomy reverse. That came out of Ashley's pocket. They have formed a company called the American National Ballet in Charleston. They hired 40 dancers. And he's the one that talked about where all the money came from for the launch of the ballet. So he went to one performance. He said that was a sort of like a preliminary performance before the big launch. He went to that performance. He wasn't able to go to the big launch performance. And he said 2 weeks after the big launch is when Ashley leaves and moves to Florida, leaving him with the business. So on cross-examination, oh my God. And let me just tell you, apparently this witness, a cousin of Doug Benefield, and Ashley had about 6 months of open communication where they were texting each other back and forth. And in one of these communications, he indicated, I don't know what she said, but his response was, "Wrong, Benefield." So the defense attorney's question to him was, "Didn't you say to her that she married the wrong Benefield?" And this started the arguments, the sidebars. Oh my God. 3, 4, 5 sidebars. Finally, the judge sends the jury out and they start arguing in open court. And the judge tells him, "Listen, we're not going to get into these text messages." If he says he doesn't remember, because the witness's answer to that question was, because he answered the question, "I don't remember saying that." And he said, you can certainly refresh his recollection and you can ask him if he felt like she had married the wrong person, but you can't get into what these text messages say back and forth. It's all hearsay. So after a lot of back and forth argument, the jury comes back in, the witness comes back in, and he says, "Did you feel like she had married the wrong Benefield?" And he's like, "No. Much ado about nothing." But now the jury's hearing this, like, "Oh, did he have an interest in her? Or, were they doing something on the side?" Now, this cousin was older than 58-year-old Doug Benefield. So why would this young ballerina, anyway, whatever. Okay. So the next witness is Eva Benefield, the daughter of Doug Benefield. And I have in my preview, the previous video, I'll put a link here if I remember to do that. The daughter testifies, and I showed you her TikTok, and she uses a lot of slang. She calls her what does she call a skank in the TikTok? Yeah. She was very, very reserved on the stand. She looked a little nervous and kind of sad about her father. But she explains how she found out, which I had showed you before, dad comes to her and says, we're going to have a family meeting. And, she explains all that. And she finds out he's married this woman already. But she did say she was 15 years old at the time. She said there was a lot of overreactions on Ashley's part over small things. This is what she observed. She observed that Ashley would strongly voice her opinions over and over and over and over again. That's quote. On multiple occasions, not just one occasion, multiple occasions, but she never saw them physically or verbally fighting. Never saw it. Never saw him threaten her, never saw him intimidate her. Now, on cross-examination, she was, after a lot of sidebars, here's what the defense was allowed to ask her. Was there a hole in the ceiling of the kitchen? Yes, there was. Is that hole consistent with a bullet? Yes. Was there a hole in the drywall? Yes. Where? In the kitchen. Was that consistent with a fist? Yes. And that's it. Those are the two witnesses we heard from before lunch. So I'm going to end it there for the day. I will listen to the rest of the testimony and I will bring that for you tomorrow's recap. And I want y'all to have a great rest. What is it? It's Tuesday. So enjoy your Tuesday and I will see you guys in the next video.